Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Everybody, it's Jeff. Nice everybody's here watching. We had a really nice day today. It was like 85 and sunny and everything here. A beautiful day. I watched the sun go down a little bit there, and it was nice. And boy, I tell you, we get a lot of nice birds around here. A lot of different kinds I've never seen when I was living at the other place. I mean, it was just, you know, we're getting cardinals and, what the hell's the other one? That's blue. And I got one that comes and eats the peanuts I leave out there for them. And, you know, they're kind of big, you know, those birds. So I'm like, wow, you know, but there's also turkeys that come around here, wild turkeys. I don't know where the hell they're hiding when they're not around, but because there's a fucking road back here, and you know they must get hit. They gotta. I mean, I don't know where the hell they're coming from, but lots of turkeys around here. Jesus, more than at the other place. And where I was at was more out in the, I guess, in the woods area than it is here. I mean, so I don't know. It's very strange, but we get that and squirrels. And I know there's skunks that come around once in a while, but yeah, all kinds of animals. So anyway, Donald Trump there blew his top in an interview because of what happened in California with Spencer Pratt having lost an election there for mayor, I guess. And he's out there saying, oh, the Democrats cheated, the Democrats cheated, the Democrats cheated. Same old shit. Everyone expected that he was going to say that. The fun part about that is he was red-faced with hysteria, you know, so pissed off. And he basically scolded the reporter that was asking him questions, you know, and accusing her of being crooked and every damn thing else. I mean, this guy's an embarrassment, okay? It almost reminded me of watching the WWF back in the 80s when the wrestlers would get on the screen and they'd scream and holler at the camera, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, and their face would get all red and the sweat would just roll down there. You know, that's what he reminded me of. And I think, you know, maybe that is what, you know, spending all those years working in the WWF or whatever the hell it was back then when he was around, maybe he learned too damn much about how to drive people crazy. Or it could be that he really is generally upset. And if that's the case, I'm happy. Because we have put up with a lot, too much from him, and we are pissed off at him. So when he's upset, pissed off, and angry, and upset, and his world is crumbling, I'm happy. And you should be too, because he deserves it. If he can't live with what the results came out to be in California, then that's his fucking problem, not the Democrats. So anyway, I got a video here that talks in more detail about it. So let's go to that, and then we'll talk about that on the other side. So here's the video.
Well, how could everyone just go, you know, that ramen really has some great qualities. She did absolutely nothing, terrible in the debate, but she gets a last-minute surge past, as the, by the way, there's not ranked choice voting, as the #1 seed to be the pick over Bass, and as she surges past Pratt. It's insane, along with the qualifications for mail-in voting. Do you know that if you don't have a driver's license, you can use an employer ID card? Really?
There are a lot of people who look at this and say there is no fraud. Okay? I don't think that they're right either. when you have a situation where you don't have voter ID.
The process for class president at most schools is more secure than what they're doing right now. And you find out the same day. So the fact that they're mailing ballots to everyone that's registered and then just, oh, okay.
So people can just dig through garbage cans, find ballots, and send them in, apparently forever after an election is over. It's not okay. It's got to come to an end, and people need to go to jail.
That was just a tiny taste of the right-wing shitstorm that ensued after Nithya Raman overtook Spencer Pratt in LA's mayoral race. You heard exasperated Fox News hosts suggest that it was scandalous to allow alternate forms of ID and have ballots mailed to all registered voters, but that's kind of how it's supposed to work. They're trying to make voting less tedious to encourage people to vote. That's how democracies are supposed to function. But my favorite claim came from Republican Randy Fine, who said that people in California were dumpster diving for ballots because, of course, if you're going to rig an election, it makes the most sense to physically go dumpster diving in search of ballots that have already been filled out, as opposed to, say, just printing off a bunch of fake ballots or changing the number in the system. Like, it's nonsensical on its face. And I've already put more thought into this claim than he did, because these people don't think. Like, these are Republicans who just say things without ever thinking them through, ever wondering whether or not they should vocalize the dumb thoughts that are going through their brains, assuming they have internal monologues in the first place. Like, their disappointment is enough for them to conclude that the election was, in fact, rigged. And it seems like the LA race is turning into the new 2020. Elon Musk amplified multiple false claims of election fraud on Twitter to his millions of followers because, of course, closeted homosexual Benny Johnson claimed that it defies all mathematical probability to see a Republican fall to third place in a city that overwhelmingly leans Democrats. Just hilarious. Clay Travis echoed Johnson's sentiment, arguing no one with a functioning brain believes these results. And washed-up actor Kevin Sorbo tweeted, "They're stealing the election in front of our eyes. What will be done about it?" Of course, Donald Trump also argued on Truth Social that it was not possible for Spencer Pratt to have lost the LA runoffs after the big lead he had. Third world nation, rigged elections. Now they'll be working on great guy Steve Hilton, because apparently they can only rig one election at a time. And of course, Trump was one of the first idiots beating this drum, writing on Truth Social the day after the election that there was big cheating by the Democrats in California. And in case you missed it, he threw a conniption fit during an interview about this, which culminated in him storming off like the petulant child that he is.
The election was rigged. It was a dirty election. And it's happening again right now in California.
Presented evidence.
It's happening
that the
right now in
2020 election
California.
was rigged.
Right now, it's look at what's
Where's
happening in
the evidence
California.
to that?
It's
The
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in
California. It's no, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days. And they aren't even close to coming up with it.
You
know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
all
that?
I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen. And I listen to people. And let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in
Do you
California.
think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
Well,
continue.
you play right into their hands. Then.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play
continue.
right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I
you've
got
never
that?
presented
Because you have no
evidence.
credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd
You
Blanche.
have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
Your
about
elections
you
in
went
this
to
country,
court.
we're like a third world country.
But, sir,
your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked,
Mr.
and so
President-
is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President-
You're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat
I
in the
traveled
rain with
all.
you.
I know. I
I've sat in the
traveled
rain
all the
with
way
you
to
for an hour,
Wisconsin.
on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press, because you know what?
Mr.
A
President,
country can never be great with a dishonest
Listen,
press.
we
Come on, let's
traveled
go.
all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
I applaud these reporters for their restraint. I really do, because if he talked to me like that, it would take everything in me to not just fly off the handle and go off on him. And he does this mostly with female journalists. You notice that? Like, he doesn't treat anyone with respect, but he especially degrades women and calls them names. And one of these days, I would love to see them just fucking clap back at him. Fuck you, Mr. President. You know what? Fuck you. You geriatric diaper-wearing cunt. You don't get to talk to people like that just because you're the fucking president. Get out of here. I'm kicking you out, bitch. Give me your microphone. Like, it's just, that's not acceptable. But, you know, putting that aside, with regard to his claim, every single election that doesn't go his way is automatically rigged. You know, it's not that Trump has repeatedly told Republican voters to not trust mail-in voting, meaning that Republicans are going to vote in person and then their votes are going to be counted first, and then the Democrats who mostly vote by mail, their votes are going to be counted second. It's that the election was rigged because it didn't turn out the way that he wanted it to. Even though it's a minor miracle that Spencer Pratt got as many votes as he did, given how blue the city he's running in is. But this is what we all have to deal with now because of Donald Trump, the first president in American history to ever deny the results of an election. Him lying about elections is a price that we all have to pay because our lawmakers decided for all of us to not hold him accountable, even though he incited an insurrection. Had just 3 more senators voted guilty at his second impeachment trial, he wouldn't have been able to run again, and the nightmare as we know it would already have been over. But since that didn't happen, we're going to have to deal with his lies for the foreseeable future, the lies of somebody who refuses to accept results of elections that he does not like. And what makes it especially aggravating is that they're crying foul even though they have a baked-in institutional advantage in the first place. Think about this. Trump was able to take office in 2016 even though he got less votes than Hillary Clinton, because we have a racist electoral college that doesn't just make the person who has the most votes win, like every other democracy. To add insult to injury, the Supreme Court just gutted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act at his behest, and southern states are gerrymandering black voters out of existence as we speak, and he's still mad. When blue states like Virginia responded by disenfranchising Republicans, their state Supreme Court struck that down even though voters approved of those maps. When Republicans do it, it's A-OK. But it's so much worse than that because our entire system, it favors Republicans at the institutional level. The Senate as an institution is designed to give rural Republican-leaning voters more of a say than the rest of the country. But that's not enough for him. They're making sure that they have the same advantage in the House now, too, as they did in the Senate. Because if they don't win every single election, then the system isn't fair, according to the party that has a lopsided advantage across the entire fucking country. It is infuriating to me. If anyone should be pissed off about the unfairness of elections, it should be us. They're the ones rigging elections through voter suppression, through illegal voter roll purges. Because, like, what do you call it when red states limit the number of voting stations in majority-minority precincts? Is that not rigging? What do you call it when states like Texas remove eligible voters from the rolls illegally? Is that not rigging? What do you call it when red states make voters jump through hoops just to register to vote and require specific forms of ID that are expensive and difficult to obtain? That's not rigging? No, because it's only rigging when Republicans lose elections, because that's the standard that Donald Trump set. And it doesn't help that news anchors entertain these false claims of fraud just for the sake of neutrality. For example, the CNBC clip that you saw at the beginning of this video featured a host that wanted to make it seem like he was challenging the person who was spewing this bullshit, but like, listen to the limp-dicked way he set up the question. Just get a load of this shit.
There may be fraud, there may not be fraud in our election system to some degree, one way or the other. I think as Becky pointed out, obviously the law is the law in California. We could have a big debate about whether to change the law. But do you think that it helps, given where you sit in the world, to speculate about fraud or potential fraud without any direct evidence of said fraud?
That is disqualifying for a journalist. It doesn't matter that he asked for evidence. The fact that he said there may be fraud is a win for the person that he was supposed to be challenging, because there's not fraud. Isolated instances of fraud are statistically insignificant, and the perpetrators are prosecuted. The scale of fraud that Republicans are alleging here is completely bullshit. And everybody needs to say that definitively and authoritatively, because if they don't, you allow Republicans to change people's perceptions of reality. Just think about how they've gotten people to believe straight up lies by repeating them again and again and again. Republicans always say confidently and unequivocally that Democrats are winning elections because they're cheating by importing immigrants into the country, and those illegal votes are always pushing them above the edge whenever they win. You know, if a Republican wins, then they're not cheating. If a Democrat wins, then they're cheating. But do you want to guess what the actual percentage of undocumented people voting in America is? Just take a guess. Based on how Republicans talk about this, you would expect it to be like millions of undocumented people, at least, maybe a plurality of voters based on the way they talk about this. But when the Heritage Foundation crunched the numbers, they found out that that was not actually the case. Surprise, surprise. The American Immigration Council explains that there's been just 68 total cases of voter fraud committed by undocumented immigrants in the last 40 fucking years, meaning illegal votes cast by undocumented people account for just 0.0001% of the entire fucking population. In other words, it's a non-issue. It doesn't happen enough to change the outcome of elections, and when it does happen, people are caught and prosecuted. But according to Republicans, this is part of how Democrats keep winning. They win by cheating. They let undocumented people vote illegally, and that's how they win. That is, of course, when they're not dumpster diving for ballots. I mean, we can't allow them to just make shit up without consequences, because society cannot survive if a portion of the population only has a tenuous connection to reality at best. And what makes LA in particular especially idiotic with regard to their fraud claims is that Spencer Pratt losing is actually a worst-case scenario for the Democrats who are supposedly rigging the election, and CNN's Harry Enten debunked this myth with the disdain that it deserved.
This is the dumbest conspiracy theory I have ever heard, because the Democratic establishment and Karen Bass wanted Spencer Pratt in the runoff. They don't want any part to do with Nithya Raman. Why is that? Because just take a look here. Okay, mayor runoff polls, Bass versus opponent versus Pratt. Bass would have crushed Pratt by 18 points. That's what the polling showed. Look at how she does against Nithya Raman, on the other hand. Raman is ahead by 4 points. Bass has a real race on her hand if, in fact, Raman is the one who advances. And, of course, the Democratic establishment is backing Karen Bass. But versus Spencer Pratt, she was crushing him. She wanted to face Pratt. She wanted nothing to do with Raman. That's why these conspiracy theories, simply put, make no sense, people. Raman is actually decently liked by LA City voters. Look at this. Okay, Nithya Raman, +5 on the net favorability rating. Karen Bass, way underwater at -22 points. You basically just need someone who's half decently well-liked to be favored, or at least have a real shot against the incumbent Karen Bass. Spencer Pratt, on the other hand, look at that. He's even less liked than Karen Bass. He's 32 points underwater. Karen Bass doesn't want to face Nithya Raman. She would love to face Spencer Pratt, because simply put, she's managed to find someone who's more unpopular than she is, and she's quite unpopular. This is the other thing. The President of the United States is such a drain on Spencer Pratt. I mean, hello, okay, Los Angeles City voters, Trump's net approval rating in the city of Los Angeles is about 55 points underwater. I mean, the idea that a Republican could be the mayor of New York when the President of the United States has a net approval rating, it's so difficult. 55 points underwater, and then registered as Republican, just 15% of the voters in the city of Los Angeles are registered as Republican. 55% are Democrats. Spencer Pratt was facing a mountain in order to win, and so Karen Bass and the Democratic establishment knew that there's basically no chance a Republican could be the next mayor of New York. The only way she could lose is if she goes up against another Democrat.
Yeah, and here we are. But in the minds of Republicans, there's no difference between establishment Democrats and progressive Democrats. They're one and the same to them. So they're not savvy enough to discern the difference, and they're sure as shit not smart enough to even consider why an establishment Democrat would prefer to go up against a Republican in a deep blue city. Because even by their logic, wouldn't it be easier to rig it against the Republican who's going to get less votes in LA? It makes no sense. Not to mention, if Steve Hilton advances, which it looks like he will, are they not going to reconcile that Democrats only rigged it against Spencer Pratt? Is he really that important? Did they just forget to rig it against Steve Hilton? And at the time that I record this, only 83% of votes have been counted. So Spencer Pratt could theoretically still win, but if he advances, will they apologize for their false claims of fraud? Of course not. They'll just claim that Democrats had to unrig it because they got caught rigging it or some shit like that, because these people are intellectually deficient and dishonest. So never, ever expect them to admit that they were wrong about anything. To them, it's always about their feelings. And since Karen Bass is deeply unpopular, it feels reasonable to expect the Republican to win, but they fundamentally misunderstand voters in these blue districts. They're not unpopular. Democrats aren't unpopular because they're too progressive like they think. They're unpopular usually because they're not progressive enough. I live in Oregon, and the same thing is kind of happening here. Year after year, our state Democratic Party gets more and more unpopular, and I don't even think I've met a Democrat in Oregon who approves of our state Democratic Party. But that doesn't mean that we're going to vote for Republicans, because that wouldn't make sense. Everything we dislike about corporate Democrats is compounded with the Republican alternative. Oregon's Governor Tina Kotek, for example, is a neoliberal corporate Democrat who's selling us out to the highest bidder, yet Oregon Republicans are accusing her of not being business-friendly enough, which is absurd. So if we dislike her because of her neoliberal corporatism, why would we then opt for a Republican who is offering even more neoliberal corporatism? They're offering neoliberal corporatism on steroids. It makes no sense. It's like saying, I'm really mad that this 4-piece chicken strip meal that I ordered was so unfilling. I'm still hungry. So next time, I'm going to get the 2-piece instead, just to show how mad I am at the fucking 4-piece. I mean, not the best example, but you get the point. It makes no sense for us to vote for the worst option because we're dissatisfied with the Democrat. And maybe Republicans would understand this, understand the differences between Democratic voters, if they took the time to understand why some Democrats are so unpopular in deep blue cities and didn't just call like all of us communists and socialists and extremists. But I will grant them that it is frustrating that it takes California so long to count the votes. I wish that they did this faster. I mean, there's not much they can do about ballots postmarked for election day that haven't come in yet, but I mean, there's no reason why it should take this long to finish counting the votes, especially considering that other states, even though they're less populous, they have mail-in voting and they get this done faster. But the reason why it takes so long in California, one, is because there's a lack of resources, and two, because they're taking their time to make sure that there isn't any voter fraud, to give Republicans the confidence that they want in American elections. The New York Times explains California relies heavily on mail balloting, which slows the tally because of the work involved to check signatures, open envelopes, and inspect ballots before counting them. The state's leaders take pride in a deliberate process meant to make voting easy while keeping elections secure. And when voters wait until the final days to submit or send their ballots, as was the case this year, they deluge elections officials with envelopes that must be handled with care. Different county offices work on different schedules depending on their staffing or labor agreements. Only a fraction of the 58 counties updated vote totals this past weekend. Most offices lack the resources to keep staff members on constant rotation. In California, each of those counties decides how much to spend on election operations, creating major differences in their capacity to count ballots, said Ben Gibbs, who works on state voting policy for Protect Democracy. So while I understand the frustration in wanting to know who won as quickly as possible, it's a logistical issue. It's an issue that Californian politicians should address. I agree with you. But to suggest that it's slow because they're rigging it doesn't make any sense. It's idiotic because if they're rigging it, they would put the results out as quickly as possible since they're just making them up, right? It's taking longer because this is a very large state and they're trying to make it secure to ensure confidence in Republicans who now think every election is stolen, that it is indeed not stolen. Like, do Republicans think they're like making it slow on purpose? They're sadistically counting as slowly as possible to antagonize them. Haha, we're stealing it and you can't do anything about it. I mean, it's crazy. Like, they talk about how, oh, all of a sudden the number jumped up. But a voter dump to Republicans is literally just counties reporting their most recent tallies. That's it. But to them, it's a conspiracy. But I mean, it doesn't really matter what you say, and explaining it does nothing because these people aren't driven by facts. They're driven purely by their emotions, like the toddlers that they are. But even though it feels pointless to fact check them, I still think it is necessary because if we don't challenge their bullshit, we're just letting them drag the rest of the country into an alternate reality that they're living in, and we shouldn't allow them to do that. So they can throw their tantrums if they want to. That's fine, but they're not going to get away with blatant lies. We have to check their lies because the second we let their bullshit go unchallenged, they win.
Well, you know something? The Republicans had better get used to losing because this is the beginning, I suppose. And I remember a time when Republicans used to tell Democrats that our feelings aren't fact, okay? And now we get a chance to throw that back at them, you know, especially for Trump. Your feelings about how this turned out, you know, isn't fact. It's just like Steven Sharilla accusing the judge that sentenced his daughter to prison. He's accusing the judge of being conspiring with the victims' families because they got the same last name. Okay, he's got no evidence or any proof of any conspiracy that happened. Okay, but I'm starting to think that maybe the Sharillas were probably Trump supporters, and that's probably why, you know, they act so fucking weird. Okay, that could say a lot right there about that. But yeah, I mean, they're going around just saying that there was a conspiracy only because they don't like how the results are turning out and how slow it was. California's a big state. They got a different way of handling their elections. They've always come in late, okay? And as he's pointed out, not all the votes have been counted yet, so we don't really know exactly what percentage what, okay? They'll just turn around and scream fraud until their guy wins, okay? That's what they've been taught, that all elections are terrible. Well, what would happen if we just stopped elections altogether? They'd probably scream more, saying the Democrats are trying to take our right to vote away. Okay, so these people you can't please. You can't please these fucking Republicans, all right? And they shouldn't be upset. They should have expected a loss here, okay? They should expect that. These are the same people that have been bitching all along here about Donald Trump. And believe me, when a president is not doing well as a president, it reflects on the whole party. All right? Trump's approval numbers, the lowest ever. Okay? Why should they expect that the other Republicans running for their seats aren't going to be affected by that? Why would they think that? Okay? You see, a year and a half makes a big difference, doesn't it? When you elect poor leadership in your party, the party as a whole suffers, and that's a lesson they should have learned a long time ago if they have any knowledge about politics. You know, the nation's opinion matters. When they're really pissed off at Trump like they are now, okay, when their lives are being handicapped all over the fucking place as they are now, what do you think people are going to do when they get the chance to pull the lever? Okay? So cheating is not the reason why that he hasn't got the votes that he needs to win here, okay? That's not what's happened here. It's a direct retaliation for the shit that Trump has done. People are just itching to get to those fucking polls so they can make their voices heard. Okay, and this is really our only way to do that and make, you know, consequences here, something that Trump's never had to face. Okay, but that's why he's all red-faced and pissed off and everything like that. Okay, I don't care that he's red. Just because he's angry doesn't mean that there's, oh, that means there must have been cheating. If he's all pissed off, that's what. No, the reporter asked him over and over, no proof, no proof, no proof, no proof. Okay, how many more fucking ways have we got to throw that in your face before you know, shut the fuck up? Okay, attacking the reporter does not make it true. Getting pissed off at news networks does not make it true. Being loud doesn't mean you're right. So this is what it is, you know, and I expected, you know, that in California it would be the first, you know, big thing that was going to show, and you know, Republicans are not happy. They're going to be losing a lot, so they better get used to it. Okay, we had to get used to it when we lost to Trump there last 2 years ago. Okay, we had to get used to that. So it's time for them to bite the fucking bullet too now. So I just, like I said, hearing about that and seeing his reaction to it just tickled me to death. Okay, I just have, I'm just thinking, you know, this guy lives in such a thick skin bubble that having it burst as the way it did on him and having him pissed off that bad was just popcorn material. To I want to replay that over and over again. I'm sure that reporter was pissed off. She didn't deserve to be yelled at by the representative of this country. That was wrong on his part. But like he said, he does that a lot to female reporters because he likes to bully women. Okay, that adds more fucking proof to the fact that this guy's a misogynist. Okay, and he's probably abused a lot of women in his life. Okay, so he doesn't like being cornered by a female reporter. That's why he just couldn't sit there anymore and take it. He had to get up and leave. Okay, fucking pissant. So yeah, so let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Roxy Sugar, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
Rim brakes or disc brakes? Rim for road. Rim brakes are easy to maintain, lightweight, lighter than your disc equivalent, and super cheap in 2025. Rim brakes, good enough for me.
This is why you shouldn't mock your opponent before a fight. Critics downplayed Dakota Ditcheva, saying she wasn't fighting real competition. Enter former UFC title contender Taila Santos. Before their fight, Santos mocked Dakota, calling her a model who didn't belong in the cage and suggested she was only popular because of her looks. She even pulled out lipstick at the face-off, playing into the Barbie insult right in front of her. But once the fight started, Dakota answered every doubt. Santos tried to expose her with elite grappling, but Ditcheva shut it down, picked her apart with devastating striking, then folded her in round 2 with a brutal knee and body shot flurry for the TKO. Afterward, Dakota grabbed the mic and said, "This Barbie just beat your ass."
There you are, Kaio. You're talking a lot today. That's better, buddy.
DoorDash Girl, the sneaky spy who brings the fries.
She delivers, she discovers, snap and share it all.
Press the crash out button and... I'm the victim! DoorDash Girl, the villain next door.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime. I loved it. It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Welcome back, everybody. Uh-oh, I'm going to start reading. I have some stuff here to read to you. This here has been an alert. Trump is attacking the NOAA. Said the Trump administration just announced it is sending ships to dismantle 900 deep-sea instruments across the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, removing our eyes and ears from one of the most scientifically important parts of the ocean. These vital devices are being removed because they are used to track the effects of greenhouse gas and to monitor the Atlantic meridional overturning current, a critical global conveyor belt of water that scientists fear is in danger of collapsing, and the ecological consequences would be devastating. It's kind of like in that movie, The Day After Tomorrow. Okay, I don't know if you guys seen that, but basically what it is, it's a sped up problem that's happening slowly in reality, but in the movie they try to show you what it would be like if the currents don't maintain the way they work in the sea, because it brings up warm air to the north to keep the north relatively warmer, so that way we don't have glaciers and you know, a whole ice age in the northern hemisphere. Okay, we've been monitoring that with stuff we've been putting into the ocean to make sure to see if the currents are maintaining their pattern here. Okay, and for some reason Trump wants to get rid of that, and I don't understand why. I don't think anybody can. I would think that, you know, in today's world where, you know, we're all dealing with issues about the environment and climate change, we would want to know what's going on, right? I mean, I would. It's like all of a sudden nobody can tell you the weather anymore. You know, imagine that. When you watch the news, no more weather reports because Trump decided, no, you're not allowed to have any more news about the weather anymore. How do you think that would feel? Well, that's kind of how I feel about this. It's like, you know, this is all part of the way we predict weather, because when we understand the flow of the ocean, we can understand the movement of the air. It all connects. So if you take away one aspect of how we, you know, explain to the audiences that watch the weather every night, okay, if you take out an element of that, which is critical to understanding weather patterns, how are they ever going to be accurate? It's already bad enough that he cut funding to meteorological sciences and stuff like that. You know, people depend on that in order to understand the weather. I mean, Christ, what are they supposed to do? Well, put their finger to the air and that's how they're going to tell you the weather every night? I mean, Jesus Christ. You know, I feel like, you know, what is the point? Why did Trump even think about this? Okay, it just is it retaliation because he's pissed off that, you know, in California, you know what I'm saying? Is that what it is? When he can't get his way, he takes it out on us. You know, is he that much of a baby that he can't stand it? Jeez. I don't know. I mean, the guy is so immature in a lot of the things that he says and does that maybe that's probably closer to the truth than not. You know, and that should scare the shit out of everybody, whether you support him or not. Okay, that you got an unhinged, demented pedophile sitting in the White House controlling your life with the stroke of a pen. He just says, we're going to get rid of this, and they do it without no fucking resistance. You know? What is this, like The Handmaid's Tale or something like that? I mean, what the fuck are we living in anyway? This isn't no goddamn democracy when a president can just be the unilateral decision maker on things like this. Okay? Christ, what the hell do you think we set that fucking NOAA up for? Okay, because somebody somewhere in the past decided we needed it to help us understand the weather. Because we want to know when a tornado's coming. We want to understand when hurricanes are coming. We want to understand, you know, when the oceans are sending up warm air, colliding with cold air, that's going to create, you know, a nor'easter. Okay? You take all that fucking shit away and, you know, geez, we're going to, you know, what's going to happen? All of a sudden we step out the door and we get sucked away by a fucking tornado because nobody knew it was coming. Okay, think about that for a minute. I mean, I realize I'm being sarcastic here in extreme, but that's kind of where he's going to leave us here, in a way. So there'll be like, you're going to see natural disasters happen, and the first thing they're going to say is, we had no idea it was going to happen. It looked like rain, but it turned out to be this. Okay? That's what they're going to be saying. And then we're going to be wondering, well, how the fuck in the past did we knew these things were coming, but now we don't? You can thank Donald Trump for that. Okay? That's the answer you recite. Donald Trump. He fucked it all up. Now, I hope whoever replaces Trump as the president has the fucking temerity to undo this and put that stuff back in the ocean where it belongs, because we got to have it. We got to have the satellites up there that monitor the atmosphere, the clouds, you know, the direction of the fucking winds. We got to have all that. Okay, because the Earth is changing. It's not becoming very friendly to humans anymore because we've damaged the environment quite a bit here in the last 100 years. So we have to be careful. And that means we have to have that stuff running. Whether or not, you know, they think that we need it, I don't care. We do need it. All right? We need it. We can debate whether or not we need to go to Mars, okay? But we can't debate whether or not we need proper weather forecasting to keep people in the know, to make sure that people have ample time to, before the fact a disaster happens, so they can get to cover, you know, an evacuation center, something like that, to save lives. But Trump, you know, lives don't matter to him. Only his life matters to him. He'd just assume throw his sons under the fucking buses, anything, just to cover his own ass. Okay, and that day's coming, if it hasn't already. Wouldn't even go to his son's wedding. Okay, what the fuck is that? I don't know. All right, let's see what else here. Okay, now this article kind of connects right on to what I was just talking about Trump, you know, cutting NOAA there. This one here is entitled, says, how the 2027 Super El Nino will replicate the 1877 global famine. In the spring of 2026, oceanographers began taking a massive pulse of warm water moving eastward beneath the surface of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. This subsurface Kelvin wave, an ocean gravity wave that moves eastward along the equator and transports massive volumes of warm water, is now breaching the surface, signaling the rapid onset of a super El Nino. The World Meteorological Organization and NOAA have issued urgent warnings predicting a 90% chance that this warming phase will persist through the winter of 2026 into 2027. Today's rapidly building El Nino shares parallels to the global climate anomaly of 1877 to 78. That event, widely considered the strongest El Nino in recorded history, triggered multi-continent droughts and a subsequent global famine that claimed between 30 and 60 million lives. Roughly 3% of the global population at the time. But to understand the true danger of the emerging 26-27 event, we must first correct a common historical misunderstanding. The El Nino of 1877 did not on its own cause the famines of 1877. The climate anomaly caused the droughts, the monsoonal failures, and the agricultural collapses. The famines themselves were entirely man-made. They were the direct result of imperial trade policies, laissez-faire economic dogma, and a political refusal to distribute food to those who could no longer afford it. Sound familiar? What occurred in 1877 was a catastrophic atmospheric convergence across 3 oceans. It began with an extraordinary preconditioning phase between 1870 and 1876. The Pacific experienced a prolonged cold period, leading to a massive buildup of thermal energy in the western warm pool. When the pendulum swung, it discharged an El Nino of unprecedented magnitude, with sea surface temperatures in the central Pacific rising 3.5 Celsius above average. The Pacific warming did not act alone. In the Indian Ocean, sea surface temperatures developed a record-breaking positive Indian Ocean dipole, an ocean atmosphere phenomenon often called the quote-unquote Indian Nino, that dramatically alters trade winds and precipitation patterns across the basin. This thermal gradient, characterized by warm waters off East Africa and extreme cooling near Sumatra, shut down the summer monsoons, plunging South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Australia into severe drought. At the same time, the North Atlantic Ocean warmed to its highest recorded levels since the 1850s. This shifted equatorial winds northward, starving northeastern Brazil of its seasonal rains. The agricultural collapse was swift and global. In British India, the monsoons failed completely across the Deccan Plateau, Bombay, Mysore, and Madras presidencies. In northern China, the crisis began as a regional dry spell during the preceding multi-year La Nina phase. Winter crops failed in 1875, and when the climate pendulum swung, consecutive years of El Nino-driven drought turned 5 provinces into an arid dust bowl. Families tore down houses for fuel, sold children into slavery, and resorted to eating bark, clay, and carrion. In northeastern Brazil's semi-arid Sertão, the vast scrubby backlands of the interior, the Grande Seca, Great Drought, decimated herds and dried up subsistence crops, leaving nearly 1 million sharecroppers starving. While the droughts were environmental, the distribution of food was political. In British India, Viceroy Lord Lytton administered the crisis through a fanatical commitment to free market capitalism and Malthusism, I guess I don't know how to say that, population theory, the belief that famine is a natural and necessary check on overpopulation. Lytton argued that southern India was so overpopulated and that government intervention in grain markets would, quote, create a habit of dependence, unquote, and disrupt the natural economy. Excuse me. Even as local grain prices surged entirely out of reach for starving peasants, the colonial administration refused to halt the export of food. At the peak of the famine in 1877, Lytton oversaw the export of a record 320,000 tons of Indian wheat to Great Britain to maintain imperial trade balances. To Lytton, the market was self-regulating and sacred. In the Madras presidency, Special Famine Commissioner Sir Richard Temple went so far as to criminalize private charity, making it illegal to distribute private food donations that might interfere with grain prices. Instead of direct relief, the colonial state established heavy labor camps. To qualify for a food ration, starving peasants were forced to travel miles on foot to work on infrastructure projects such as the Bangalore-Mysore railway line. Temple introduced a ration known as the, quote, temple wage, unquote, This consisted of 450 grams of grain per day for a long day of manual labor in extreme heat. The temple wage provided roughly 1,627 calories a day, fewer than the starvation rations later provided to inmates at the Nazi concentration camp Buchenwald, and far below what was required to sustain hard labor. Weakened by work and severe malnutrition, millions succumbed to cholera and malaria epidemics that swept through the unhygienic camps. In Qing Dynasty China, the failure was one of administrative exhaustion rather than ideological cruelty. Unlike the British Raj, the Qing court acknowledged its duty to feed the starving and allocated 10.7 million taels, a standard Chinese weight for silver currency, of relief silver to Shanxi province. However, the state strategic grain reserve system had been depleted by 25 years of internal warfare, including the Taiping Rebellion, and tax revenues had been diverted to military modernization. Furthermore, China lacked the rail infrastructure to move grain into its mountainous, landlocked interior. Relief shipments rotted or were looted on mountain passes long before reaching Shanxi, where some 5.5 million people ultimately died. In Brazil, the imperial government in Rio de Janeiro simply ignored the Sertão coastal sugar plantations, continued to export their crops throughout the drought. Sharecroppers known as flagellados, the scourged ones, that's what that means, were forced to migrate hundreds of miles on foot to the coast. Desperate and displaced, nearly 120,000 of these migrants were co-opted by Amazonian rubber barons who used them as cheap, debt-bound labor to fuel the country's first rubber boom. Today, as the 2026-27 El Nino intensifies, we live in a vastly different geopolitical and technological world. Global forecasting is highly advanced, well, it was anyway, and absolute agricultural production is larger than ever. Yet, the structural risks of modern food distribution remain remarkably similar. Cruelty still underpins the foundation for many government policies, with many oligarchs insulating their own wealth at the expense of the vulnerable. No surprise. This vulnerability is compounded by a modern agricultural engine that is already buckling under severe geopolitical stress. The recent closure of the Strait of Hormuz has triggered a massive spike in global energy prices and created critical shortages of the fertilizers essential for sustaining high crop yields. These kinetic disruptions are straining the global food system, acting as a dangerous socio-economic preconditioning phase just as the climate pendulum begins to swing. Beneath these geopolitical fractures, the baseline thermodynamics of the planet have fundamentally changed. In 1876, the global average temperature was 13.8 Celsius. Today it is 15.23 Celsius, a baseline warming of 1.43 Celsius, driven by fossil fuel emissions. James Hansen recently predicted the current El Nino could push the average global temperature anomaly to 1.7 C above the pre-industrial average, making 2027 the hottest year ever recorded. This extreme heat will release unprecedented energy into the atmosphere, intensifying localized droughts and monsoonal failures. The agricultural impacts will be highly asymmetric. While heavier rainfall may boost soybean production in the Americas, severe droughts are projected to reduce corn, rice, and wheat yields across South and Southeast Asia, Australia, and Southern Africa. When crop failures occur, modern states frequently resort to a contemporary form of resource hoarding and unilateral export restrictions. The recent actions of the Indian government offer a preview of this dynamic. Facing domestic food inflation and monsoon damage, India, which controls roughly 40% of the global rice market, enacted a series of bans and surcharges on rice exports. The ban triggered immediate panic buying and caused global rice prices to spike by 15 to 25%. It has also prompted copycat protectionism, with Myanmar enacting its own temporary export restrictions. For net importing countries in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, these unilateral policies are catastrophic. They do not lower domestic prices in the exporting countries, but they drastically reduce global supply, pricing the poorest populations out of the market. It is a modern iteration of what starved Madras and Shanxi 150 years ago. As the Pacific pendulum swings toward an extreme warm state, the most terrifying parallel to 1877 is civilization's impending response. We are facing a climate shock that exceeds the thermal extremes of the Victorian era. Unlike 150 years ago, despite getting hit by climatic and kinetic warfare resulting in shortages and higher input prices, modern global agriculture could potentially still produce enough calories to sustain humanity through severe multi-continent droughts. But if history is any guide, even if aggregate worldwide production remains sufficient, a combination of bureaucratic ineptitude and ideological cruelty will once again dictate who eats and who starves. So, yeah. And then, like I said, Trump decides to, cut people off at the knees with the NOAA, so that way we can never understand what's coming our way. So, my other thought about this, people are always concerned about overpopulation on this planet, and I've always said, Mother Nature takes care of that in its own way. Okay, there comes a point where pandemics will start, weather problems are going to start. I mean, all these things, kill a lot of people on this planet, not to mention warfare and everything else. I don't think we have to worry about overpopulation, but we do have to worry about how our lives are affecting our own ability to survive. Okay? And you could say that, we're actually bringing about our own demise by the way we do things in today's world. We don't care about carbon emissions. We don't care about wars and what we're doing to the environment in each war we create. I mean, I was just looking at a bunch of videos here today while I was eating of bomb detonations that went on during the Cold War. And I was thinking, you know what? People back then really didn't think about the environmental fallout from all those test bombings, test explosions that they were doing almost every fucking year, okay? They never thought about that. All they care about was how big the bang was, okay? They didn't give a shit about what that was going to lead to eventually, okay? We got radiated areas of this world all over the fucking place, believe it or not, okay? Every place we ever dropped a bomb to test to see if the fucking thing, okay, all those areas are still highly radioactive, even after all this time, okay? And yet we're supposed to believe that humans don't have the ability to destroy this planet. We already are destroying it, okay? And we're not doing it through bombs. We're doing it just by everyday living and by how we draw so much fucking energy, wasteful energy, that we're wasting it. And at the same time, we wonder why prices go up. We wonder why food goes up and stuff. And it's just like, well, look, you can only do so much to this planet before it fights back, okay? And we're at the point now where the Earth is changing, and it's going to make it almost uninhabitable for anything living to stay alive, okay? We don't have any other place to go if that happens. We're stuck here. Yeah, Mars this, Mars that. They're finding out now going to Mars is really not that easy a thing, and may not even be that possible with our current level of technology. Going to the moon and going to Mars are two different things, okay? Two different things. And the human body cannot withstand long times in space without gravity. It will die, okay? and coming back to Earth after spending months and months in space, deep space with no gravity, even if you got exercise bikes and shit like that, that's not enough. Okay, they're going to come back and die by the gravity crushing them to death because their bodies have weakened. Okay, so there's no way we can actually go to Mars right now as it stands. So we can forget about trying to, you know, jump off this planet and go to some other planet. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to fucking happen. So you either take care of the house you're living in, or you can go homeless. You know, it's up to you. But, you know, this global issue here, this warming phase that we're going to go through this year and into next year, it's really going to do some damage here to crops and all that. Like, we haven't done enough damage already by what we just did here, thanks to Trump, by, you know, cutting the farmers' knees out from under them. So now they can't produce anything. So we're going to come into a phase where you think there's not enough food on the shelves now. Wait till we start to feel that. Okay? You're not going to see anything. In fact, today I went down to Hannaford to go get just a few things. Walked in the fucking store. This is the one that's on Stillwater, okay? The vegetable shelves were bare. There was one bag of apples left. Maybe some fruit here, a little bit there. But there was nothing. Nothing. Now, at the same time, less than 2 or 3 miles, there's another Hannaford. You walk into their store and they got all of it, everything, okay? But going into that one there that I usually go to, because I know everybody that works here, okay, going in there and seeing that was a shock, because I never seen it like that. Even during the pandemic, it wasn't like that. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? Why is it this Hannaford doesn't have anything and the other ones, they got everything? You know, I don't know. Maybe it's the way they supply. I don't know. But that gave me a peek into what could happen in days to come, after everything Trump's done, after what I just read to you, okay, happens. We could be seeing that in any of these fucking grocery stores, okay? We're going to see a shortage of a lot of things. And prices, they're going to go up. Like I told you, when prices go up, they stay up. They never come down. You think changing presidents is going to make that happen? No. Okay? No. It's not going to happen that way. The next president coming isn't going to go, okay, everything's back the way it was when Biden was in. No, no, no. It's not going to happen that way, because the damage is going to be too severe, and then we're going to be going through this at the same time. And that's going to work against the next president coming in to lower prices in the grocery stores. Okay? That's what's going to happen. So, people, you know, when I tell you elections matter, they fucking do. You got to stop playing these silly games that this is, oh, we got to own the libs and all that attitude there. That's childish thinking. You're supposed to be an adult now. You got to put that shit to bed. When you're looking at a fucking election coming up, you got to take it serious, because it is your life that you're putting on paper here, or a ballot, whatever you do it, to the computer screen. But it's your life you're playing around with, and you better fucking understand that. Okay? I don't know how you grew up and what your parents or your teachers taught you about elections, but it's not something frivolous or something, oh, well, I'll do it if I want to. Okay? They should have been more stressful on the fact that this is important, because if you're an American, this is essential for an American to do their duty. I already told you in the last video about how important that is, that nobody should stand in your way between the voting booth, okay, and you. Nothing. Anyone that tries to do that needs to get stepped on or stepped over, whichever, okay? Nobody has a right to stop you from doing your fucking civic duty. Nobody. You can sue people for that. Even your fucking job. Your job keeps you from doing it, and if you ask the boss if you can go vote and they say no, you're going to be seeing me in court. Okay, you're violating my goddamn right as an American. So, like I said, this is important. These elections are important. Every fucking one. Sure, it may look funny and comical at times, but it's not a laughing matter at the end of the day. You know that now, don't you? It's no laughing matter anymore. Okay? So we gotta wise up here. and understand that the political, you know, what do they call that? The partisanship and stuff like that. That's like bullshit football games or something. This is not a game. Okay? This is not a game. This is life and death. Okay? That's as important as sending troops out on the battlefield to defend this country. That's what that is. All right, so let's call it quits here for now, and I'll see you all another time. So subscribe, comment, and share, and you know, keep your ears open as always for any topics of health that's going on, and help each other out. It's needed, and it will be needed in days to come. So please don't be ashamed to offer help when you can, in whatever form you can. It's always appreciated. So I'll talk to you later. Take care.